shorty, what your name is? Do you have a man? Who you came with?
I know I told you yesterday that I went to go see Till, the movie Till
Did.
about
How
Emmett
was
Till.
it?
It was no nuance. It was very clear who was
Mm,
good and who was evil in that.
mm,
It ain't no,
mhm,
I
mhm,
understand where the white woman who
mhm,
claimed he did this was coming from, and I understand where, these white boys in Mississippi was coming. No, it wasn't no understanding
mm,
none of that. It was very, very clear.
mm.
Very, very clear. But man, I think you would really like it, Jackie. Honestly, I
Two?
think, I think you would. I
I'm
think,
about to look it up right now.
yeah, I think I would. I would definitely want to hear your opinion on it.
Mhm,
Um, they didn't really. I mean, we know the story. They didn't really bring up a whole lot of new information about Emmett Till's story. I think what was really, and I don't know, it was some parts, and I'm like, is this true? Because they had this one part, and I'm not, again, I can't really do a spoiler because you know the story, but
right.
there is one part where they drag him out. He's accused. Well, he does whistle at this white woman, and so they
Mm,
drag him out of the house. And when they drag him to the truck, they ask the wife, the woman, is this the boy,
mhm,
that harassed you? And she said, yeah, that's him. And then they say, all right, boy, we're gonna teach you a lesson. And then they pan to these like two black guys who are on the truck holding them down, like with this angry face holding them down, with the white guys, driving to go away.
mhm,
I've never heard that. I've heard of a lot of
mm,
accounts. I've
mhm,
One of my former professors at Clark wrote a whole book about it. It was a fiction book, but it was based off of Emmett Till's story.
mhm,
Heard a lot of accounts of Emmett Till's story, and I've never heard that there were any black people involved
mm,
in his killing. So I'm interested to know why that was in there, and
mhm,
why they felt the need, if they wanted to, Hollywood it and put in some, add some stuff to it. Why that?
right.
Because generally what Hollywood would do, especially with stories where white people are clearly the antagonist, clearly
Mhm,
the enemy,
mhm,
what they would do is they would add a white savior complex.
right.
They would add a good white person in there to show
Right.
this ain't all white people. Let's add a
Mhm,
good one so that it don't turn into a race war of black people versus white people.
mhm,
Black people are good, white people are evil. So they would add
mhm,
in that part to kind of, add, even if it doesn't exist, right?
mhm,
And I'm okay. I mean, I'm not okay with it, but I'm used to it. It's fine if that's what you feel you need to do to ease
mhm,
your white guilt. But to add on, if that's not true, to add on black people being involved when that didn't happen, I don't
mhm.
like that. You know what I'm saying? I don't like that. You want
Yeah,
to say something about that?
I don't think I've heard that either. Um, but I don't think it necessarily strays like it's in the realm of possibility enough so that someone could see the movie and be like, well, there were black people who were like overseers or had like other sorts of like roles. But yeah, but I've never heard that like involved in Emmett Till's story. Um, yeah, and I mean, I'm kind of curious about like who made the movie and why that part was
Right,
included now.
right. And I went to go look. Well, when the name came up, it
Mhm.
was produced by Whoopi Goldberg and like a couple of black
Oh,
people, but I
okay.
think the director might have been Nigerian or like African or something.
Mhm.
Um, I believe. So I don't know. I need to do a little bit more research, but so that made me a little uncomfortable. Also the politicizing of Emmett Till's kidnapping and murder made me a little uncomfortable because in the midst of it, you have these NAACP leaders that are asking Mamie, hey, I know you're grieving, but
Mhm.
this could actually be good to help us
Mhm.
push this 1957 legislation bill.
Mhm.
This can be a good way to bring attention to this and that. And I just that made me really, but I know that that's not
But
unlikely.
that,
Things like that.
yeah, but I feel like I've heard that that's true because she was
Yeah,
already involved in movement work. So,
yeah.
mhm,
That I'm pretty sure did happen.
mhm,
Um and in some ways I think it is necessary, right? I think
mm,
that when you have folks like Jordan Davis' mom running for office and
mm,
becoming a
mhm,
councilwoman and stuff like that, it kind of using death and using racism and using tragedy to turn into something for a greater cause. So, I can understand that, but essentially, man, I mean, like the lady who played Mamie did a phenomenal job. She
Well,
was,
shout out to Spelman.
oh, she's a Spelman sister.
Mhm,
She did
mhm,
her thing. I was like, man, this woman has got me
mhm,
like, and there's a scene where she's a witness on the
mm,
like towards the end of the court case, and they bring her up to testify. And when she talks, and what they try to do is put in a reasonable doubt that this might not be her son because he was so messed up, you really couldn't tell. So they were
right.
basically like, "How do you know that that's your son?" Because he,
Mm,
the way it looked, you couldn't even see the face. Like his face was all
mhm,
dismembered.
mhm,
And so she starts to describe how she knew it was her son.
mm.
I was like, I'm talking about tears is like up, like I'm
Oh,
like, this lady
wow.
is good.
Oh,
She
wow.
brought all the emotion out of me. It was like
Okay.
when she started explaining how she knew and the process she went through and to know that it was her son,
Mhm,
I was like, man. Another thing was that I saw an interview with the director or whoever writer, and they
mhm,
said that one thing they didn't want to do that's done in a lot of Black films is sensationalize or bring a lot of attention to Black trauma and Black
mm,
death.
mhm, mhm,
With the whipping over and over again, the
mhm,
rapes
mhm,
over and over
mhm,
again, the deaths
mhm,
and the
mhm,
hangings all over, and you just see it on the screen, and it just make you
mhm,
cry, make you angry. And they was like, we ain't really interested in that. You know what I'm
mhm,
saying?
mhm,
The story is bad. We've seen it. We've heard it. We've seen the pictures.
mhm.
His mama had an open casket funeral for that reason. So
Right,
we know what happened. We don't have to see it over and over. I don't want to traumatize my people like that, but
right.
I do want to tell this story. And
Mhm,
so I think they do a pretty good job of balancing that,
mhm,
where they tell the story and then there's this kind of implied gruesome scene,
mhm,
but they don't dwell there and they don't visually show it. But then there are some parts where they do show it
mhm,
because it's necessary for you to
right.
see so that you understand.
Mhm.
But they don't do it with everything. And
Okay.
I think that's what I appreciate very much about this film is that they don't dwell on the Black trauma so much,
Mhm.
but they give you enough to tell the story.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
there are some uncomfortable parts, but then there also it could have been even more uncomfortable, and I think they chose not to do it that way.
Mm. I like that, and I appreciate that. I was just looking at the show times. There are no show times anywhere near here, so I
Oh,
am very sad that I missed out on that.
do you
Because
have a
I
Fire
mean,
Stick? Do you have like an
I do
Amazon
not.
Fire Stick? Oh, okay.
I do
Oh,
not. I do not. But
I'll send you the order it
I'm
or something.
wondering if it's gonna come on like one of the streaming platforms soon enough. Because I feel like a lot of movies, because of COVID, have been coming to streaming pretty soon. So I hope that's the case, that I can at least catch it when it comes out. Um, and I'm a little surprised. Like maybe I just didn't think about the time when it actually came out, but I
Mhm.
thought that it would still be in theaters right now, because there were a lot of things I couldn't do it with Black Panther, but there were a lot of things that I was like, I'm gonna just have to wait a little bit till I get through till I get
get
through
through.
life and have a little bit more time to sit down and watch something and not feel guilty that I should be
Doing
catching
something
up on
else.
whatever else. Yeah, yeah,
Nah, I
yeah.
got you.
But yeah, I appreciate that because I really have been thinking, particularly with Black Panther, how often Black Death is used as like a plot device, like either someone dies in the movie just to move like the plot forward, and that's like something that happens. Um, and I don't know if I've reached any like concluding thoughts about that other than having it like raised in my consciousness that um Black Death is just so often used as a plot device, even at times when I feel like it's not necessary
Mm,
um within a movie. So obviously we all know that with Black Panther that Chadwick Boseman passed away like in real life. But
right.
then if you're watching Black Panther or any other movies where a character in the movie dies, like I often think like, was it fully necessary to like move the plot forward? Like, does it
Mm,
always have to be Black Death that
mm,
moves the plot forward? So
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I don't know why they had to kill Angela Bassett. They ain't have to do
mhm.
that. They ain't have to
I
do
was
that.
trying not to say it, but we could put a
Oh,
spoiler
my
alert on
bad.
here. We could
I'm
put a
sorry.
spoiler alert on here.
You can put spoiler. Okay, yeah.
Hmm.
Um, but and last thing I want to say about Till, then I know we can get into the episode. I think another thing that they did, and maybe when you come down to Atlanta, if it's still in, it may still be in theaters because it was only like 1 or 2 showtimes. So I think it's
Okay.
actually on its way
It's
out
like,
as well.
hmm.
But if it's still here by the time you get here, you should definitely check
Hmm.
it out while you're down
Hmm.
in Atlanta. But I think to contrast the despair of the story,
Mm.
they brought life through the costumes. So
Mm.
everything was bright.
Hmm.
The way they shot it was like bright
Hmm. Hmm.
colors, oranges,
Mm.
purples,
Mm.
greens.
Mm.
Everything, a lot of stuff was in the daytime. Like
Mm.
I noticed everything, like the color and the lighting was very bright.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Her
Interesting. Hmm.
house bright, furniture bright. Even when they brought his body back and she had to view his body, it
Hmm.
was bright.
Hmm.
And I was like, I think this is on purpose because I was
Yeah.
noticing that. And I'm like, I think this is on purpose because typically it would be gloomy and
Yeah.
sad.
Hmm.
And as sad as I was like, but these sisters is fly. Like these sisters got like dressed to the nine. Like,
Uh-huh.
and there was like a scene where this rich Black guy was helping to fund the NAACP, and he fresh suits and Black people in swimming pools,
Okay.
and it
Hmm.
was just like they doing this after like midway through. I'm like, they doing this on purpose because
Hmm. Hmm.
as sad as I am, these people look good.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm glad to hear that because
Yeah.
you're right in terms of like often these, sad movies um have like this very like dark cast over them. And I think about that, like, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking a little bit too deeply, but I often think about like in real life, how many times Black death is like justified. Like, somebody dies because, they got killed by the police. Like it's like, well, maybe they shouldn't have been speeding or whatever other sorts
Yeah.
of like silly justifications people give. And I think that, obviously like that darkness and like the dramatic music in a movie, like kind of puts you in a psychological headspace of like negative, like down sort of like feelings. And I think that that might make it easier to be like, well, this is just what happens when this sort of atmosphere is around or created or whatever. But I think just like that psychological juxtaposition of like brightness and like people looking good and stuff, that makes the death seem that much more unusual. Like, how does this thing happen in this sort of context?
In this context,
and I think that that's important to like recognize, especially with a story that we've like normalized. Like, we've all heard this story. And so I think because we've all just like lived with this story, it's like, well, this is just what happens. And so I think like even like these bright colors and, you know, people looking good, it's like, well, no, this is not what happens. This is, you know, very different. This is abnormal. This is an aberration. And even if it is something that we have normalized, it's something that we need to rethink about it being normal.
Yeah. I think and they do a good job of also showing that contrast between being from the North, or Black people in the North at the time and Black people in the Deep South at the time, because, you know, and I don't want to tell too much of the movie, but there's some other contrast that they bring out there. So, but that's a really, really good point of, no, this is not normal in our communities. We don't see this as normal. We are a full of life people. So, and we will never normalize this, and we will never say that these conditions and these results and this pathology in our lives as Black people will never be okay with us. It will always be abnormal. It will always be, you know, out of pocket, and it will always be something that will always be new to us. So that's a really, I didn't even think about that, but that's a good point. So, hey, welcome back, y'all. Street Academy Podcast, where we keep moving in the academy, moving in the streets. We've been talking. We started the I think I'm gonna keep all that. We started the intro late. This all good. How you feeling, Dr. Hater? You good?
You know, I'm here. I'm shucking and surviving.
Not shucking and surviving. You ain't jiving?
You know, give me another like 4 or 5 days. Let me get through the rest of these grades, and then I'll be jiving.
Listen, yeah, man, life is good on my end. Like you said, getting grades done, finishing up the semester. I think that's actually like a great segue into the conversation. One of the things, well, actually, I don't know if you want to kind of take us into it, because this was your idea, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, we're here. We obviously talk about a whole lot of stuff, but I don't think we ever like did a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of Black faculty life. And it is, you know, it's one of the things that comes with its own sort of like unique challenges. You know, a lot of people who, you know, listen, they probably have gone to college themselves and, you know, have their own experiences with Black professors, whether that's at HBCUs or not at HBCUs or wherever. But, you know, I just wanted to give a little peek behind the curtain of what it means to be Black faculty here in this 2022nd year of our Lord. Jesus and Audrey.
Jesus and Audrey. Aubrey Graham.
Audrey Lord.
I'm thinking Drake. Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. I think by now many of our consistent listeners know, you know, what we do for a living. You know, that we are professors, you of education, me of sociology and Africana studies. And so we
actually, there's an update on that. I can't believe I haven't told you. So I am now officially affiliated with Africana Studies too. So
look at you.
Studies and Africana Studies is my life now.
Yeah, them affiliations, that's so difficult to navigate. I don't know how they do it at you know, at your university, but at mine, it can be kind of difficult to navigate, especially if you don't have a chair that understands the significance of it and is behind the push, because a lot of times it's not the Africana studies that's the major push. It's always
Right.
the affiliate. So it's not
Right.
Africana studies and you're affiliated with education, or
Mhm.
Africana studies and you're affiliated with sociology. It's
Mhm.
vice versa. So
Exactly.
it just kind of shows you that there's
Mhm.
still a big push that
Mhm.
unless you're at like a Temple, you know what I'm
Right.
saying, or something like
Right.
that, or at a Princeton,
Mhm.
where there's
Right.
a very strong Africana studies
Mhm.
program.
Mhm.
But unless it's something like that, you're not really gonna. So I don't know how easy it has been for you to navigate that affiliation. I mean, I have a very supportive chair and I have a
Mhm.
pretty supportive program. So anything I need in terms of that, and my dean as well,
Mhm.
has like I've sat down with, she's new, but she just came on this year. She's
Mm.
like, Jonathan, anything you need in terms of how to navigate this affiliation, even through your tenure process and all of that,
Mm.
I'm here. And we want to, you're kind of setting the mark,
Mm.
but so we're like following how you do it. And then we want to see how we can make it better for the next person and the next person. So
That's beautiful.
they've been really supportive. And so actually next semester will be my first time teaching like a full on like Africana studies course. Most of them have been
Beautiful.
kind of like intersections, but
Mhm.
this is the first time it's African diaspora, it's fully Africana studies, and I'm really excited. So yeah,
That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
I
So
love it.
join the affiliate education Africana studies.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, the main thing that I wanted to, well, maybe not the main thing, because, I can be the question queen when it comes down to it. But I thought, it might be interesting to start out with like why we even wanted to be faculty in the first place, because I don't feel like that's something that people grow up saying, I want to do. Even if people say, I want to be a teacher, it's more likely that people are talking about, I want to be elementary school, middle school, high school teacher than be teaching college students.
Right.
So why do you decide to take this long lonely road into faculty?
Feel like brown sugar. When did you fall in love with
Yeah.
being faculty?
With academia.
Academia. Well, I actually, some people who may not know, my first love, or the thing I wanted to do first when I came out of high school, I don't know if I said this on here before. I wanted to be Charlemagne. I wanted to be on the radio. I wanted to be
Of course. Of
toxic.
course.
You
Yeah.
wanted to major in toxicity.
Yeah. But they didn't offer it. So you just settle for something else. All right.
You had to settle for a PhD. You really wanted to be toxic.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I majored in communications because I wanted to be on the radio.
Mm.
I was like, oh, that could be. I would listen to the radio all the time growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, man, I want to do that and kind of be in entertainment and be in radio and TV and stuff like that. And I didn't know how. And then somebody said, well, communications typically takes you down that road. So I was like, okay, I'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first major. And then I started reading books like Du Bois, The Negro, Ivan Van Sertima, Blacks in Science, Stolen Legacies, George M. James. I just started going deep down that whole the Black canon. And that's what kind of drew me towards that. And then I started like just reading books, just super deep books. I was like 18, 19, thinking probably way too deep than I should have been thinking at that age, but kept me out of trouble. So that's good.
Some
But then
perks.
definitely perks to it. So then that's when I went into like religion and theology and things like that. But I went into it, but I knew I didn't want to be a preacher. I knew I didn't want to be a pastor. And even in studying theology, I was like, I don't know how long I'm gonna be in this church. Even though I was a part of it, I could already, it was something in me that was like, I don't know how long I'm gonna be here. Cause it was already some stuff I was seeing. And based on what I was learning culturally and what I was taught spiritually, it was some clash in
Mismatches.
there. Yeah. So I already kind of knew at some point it's a possibility I might not be here, and I don't want my bread and butter to be gone if I decide not to be a part of this church no more. So I decided to go. It was like 3 routes at Oakwood at the college I went to when I decided to go into teaching. You could do theology pastoral, theology teaching, or theology chaplaincy. And I didn't really know what a chaplain was. And I heard it had something to do with the military. And at the time, I didn't really believe Black people should be going to the military. So I was like, well, I don't want to be a chaplain and I don't want to be a pastor. So I guess I'll just do this teaching thing. So I started taking teaching courses and taking courses in education. And I liked it. You know what I'm saying? I like, teaching and teaching kids and all that other kind of stuff. And so then that led to me going into African American. I went into African American studies because I like the topic, but I always kept that education piece in the background. Like, well, if I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna use this to teach, But I think it was maybe around, I was like in my early to mid 20s when I knew that I liked to teach, but I didn't want to just teach on the K through 12 level, and that I eventually would want to teach college. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what the politics around it. I just knew I wanted to get a PhD. I knew I wanted to teach college. Then when I got older and when I started, when I got into a PhD program and everything that came with it, then I realized, there's different ways you can teach college. You can be an adjunct. You can be a teaching assistant. You can have ABD. You can have a PhD. You can have a non-tenure track. You can have a tenure track. You can be a lecturer. You can be assistant professor and stop. You can go all the way to full professor, or you can be a higher ed, higher ed administration. You can be a dean. You can be a provost. So it's all these different ways you can play with higher ed and teaching and all of that. So I kind of fell into it by accident because I really didn't. I knew things I liked. I just didn't know what it looked like in terms of a career. Right. I would only say I chose it around 2018 when I graduated with my PhD, and I had the choice of staying in that because I was in an administrative role, and I had the choice of staying in the administrative role or being faculty. And I chose to be faculty because at the time it paid more. So that's why it paid more. And now I continue to be faculty because because I probably could get an administrative job that pays about the same as what I make now, but I like the what was I gonna say, the time,
like that flexibility.
The flexibility we have in our jobs is so important right now. It's so important. Like the fact that I'm even here in Atlanta, you know what I'm saying? But I still, work in Florida a majority of the time. I'm still in Florida because I am a Florida state state resident, resident of the state of Florida, which I have to abide by the state of Florida tax laws.
Listen, it's vacation. You can take vacation and visit places other times. That's fine.
At other times, but a majority of the time I am in the state of Florida because my license is Florida. Gotta cover them taxes. But anyway, so but the flexibility that I have to be able to move about, come and kind of go as I please is extremely important. And somebody recently asked me, they said, how long are you going to stay in faculty and would you ever consider going into the administration role? And I said, yeah, I would, but my lifestyle would have to change.
Right.
I would have to be comfortable being in one city. Everything that I need is in one city. Maybe if I had like a traditional family, kind of situation going, then that probably could work. I could probably do a 9 to 5, come home type situation. But because of the way my life is set up right now, I can't. I have to be flexible. I got to be able to move about. Yeah. And so faculty works for me.
Yeah. I mean, that is a huge pro of faculty life. So, I think I probably have shared before that I started out teaching like K-12. I was a high school teacher for a while, and then I got into youth work and I was working with college students, and I realized that I really enjoyed being on a college campus. And I enjoyed teaching. And so I said, well, if I want to be on a college campus and I want to teach, then obviously I have to go back and get my PhD so I can be a professor.
Mhm.
So that's what it was for me.
Mhm.
But I don't think I anticipated the sort of like flexibility that we have as faculty to like create our own sorts of lanes. Um, so, for next semester, I am working with, I'm on a team of folks. Like some of us are researchers, some of us work in education as like educators. And we decided that we wanted to take on this project. And so, it was just something that we were like, we're going to do. And because I'm faculty, like I get the time and the funding to support that sort of stuff. And I just didn't like necessarily think about that flexibility before. I just knew that I wanted to like teach and be on a college campus. But even as far as like teaching, when I was teaching high school, it was given to me. It was like, so this semester you were teaching world history, next semester you were teaching US history, next semester you're teaching whatever other kind of history. And that was basically how it was done. And to an extent that's similar in faculty, but like to an extent it's also like, well, there's, you can teach this one class that we have to offer because the majors have to take this class, but then you could also offer something else that like is more interesting, which is how I'm ending up teaching this class that I have titled Unapologetically Black.
Mm. Mm. So is
So
it the creativity that it allows for you to have as a
I
Black
think
faculty?
so.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
I think so. It offers creativity, it offers flexibility, and it offers like acceptance, right? Because I think that when I think about some of my friends, family members who, they're doing something like they're in a field that they enjoy, they're like, I like doing this, I like doing that, but then they are very confined as far as, if they say, hey, I'm in medicine and I'm interested in doing some sort of medical related project, they probably have confines and parameters that won't allow them to pursue something that they might be interested in. And I don't
Mm.
feel like those, I mean, we do have confines obviously within faculty, but I feel like they're so few in comparison to other fields and industries.
Mm. Um, Question for you now that you talking about this. Is being a professor, college professor, which has its own kind of occupational prestige,
Mm,
um, is it everything you thought it would
mm,
be? A lot of times, and this is what I found with a lot of my friends
mm,
who are, particularly my friends who are lawyers,
mm,
they go into law because,
mm,
of the prestige of the, what you see on TV and how much they make and all this other kind of stuff. And they go into it, and I don't know one friend who went into law who were like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm so happy I'm doing law. I'm so passionate. I love
really?
every single, and I know a lot of them. Every
Yeah.
single one is like, how do I get out of here? Like,
Wow.
I hate it. Either I hate it or it's not what I expected, or
Mhm,
or they're parlaying it into something else. Every single
mhm,
one from, obviously we have a mutual friend, Audra,
mhm,
to, another one of my friends, Tamika, others.
mhm,
Yeah, all of them
mhm,
are like, how can I parlay this into something else? Um, and so that's one thing I've noticed with a lot of jobs and majors and so, and really college too. I think, and I mean, you're in college readiness and college acceptance, and you publish on that
mhm,
topic and everything. And I
mhm,
think one thing that's so important is that we need to give these students a a clearer look at what these jobs are going to be like
Yeah.
before they major or go into it, because most times it's not what you think.
Right.
I got a friend who is a medical doctor, and he's looking at me. Obviously, he make way more money than me, and he's like, "Jon, you don't know how bad I wish I would have done what you're doing."
Really?
I'm like, and you know this person too.
Mm.
And I'm like, bruh, you have no idea how bad I wish my bank account looked like yours.
And there it is. And there it is.
So you can have my degree if I could have your bank account.
Right. Basically.
And he's like, I mean, yeah, that's cool and all, but he's like, no, like I love like when you post things, or like the things you're able to do and your impact and things you publish and things you, and I'm just like, and I'm stuck here in this hospital, you know, putting band-aids over
right,
you know, stuff. And am I making a difference for real? Like, I feel like you're making a difference. And I do too. You know, I'm like, I love what I do. So he's like, you know, and he's trying to find ways to parlay being a medical doctor into kind of education, and like, how can I build a school, or how can I go into this? He's like, I'm trying to leave this. You know what I'm saying? It's not what I thought it would be.
Okay.
So we have to find ways to, like, I kind of went off on a tangent, but I'm coming back to the question. We really have to find ways to teach these college students, or these, you know, high school students, even find ways for them to get like apprenticeships or something, so that they really know this ain't what you see on TV.
Yeah.
You know, being a professor ain't How to Get Away with Murder, and you see Annalise Keating. That's not all professors is. You get up and then you teach, and then you sit down and you say some stuff, and the students are interested, and you sit down. That ain't everything. Being a lawyer is not all Olivia Pope, and you running around the White House and you know, solving problems. Being a medical doctor is not all House or Grey's Anatomy, right? So we need to find ways to teach what it really is like in these fields, so that these kids and these students know what it is that they're getting into, have a better understanding before they pledge their life to something, and then it's not what they want, and then they end up wanting to do something else, and you have these very unhappy, you know, depressed adults. So I say all that to say, is it what you thought it was?
I mean, I love that question, but I also think that I would answer yes. But at the same time, when I started, I feel like I had a very realistic understanding of what it would be in terms of the pros and cons. And I think that you're right in terms of with this job, and I think with a lot of jobs, that people don't necessarily have a good understanding of what they're getting into because of this like romanticized picture that's painted. I also think that like I had the benefit of age on my side, and like having worked, you know, so I taught for a while. I worked on college campuses. Like I did all this stuff for the better part of like a decade. I was in my early 30s when I started doctor school. And so, you know, having worked since, you know, I was, you know, 22-ish, you know, and then going to school, I had no sort of assumptions that the job would be fantastic, peaches and creams and roses every day. Like, if anyone has a job for more than a year, you know that there are ups and downs in whatever job. I have a friend who always would say, it's not, the grass isn't greener, it's just different grass. And I
just different kind of grass.
It's just different kind of grass. And I firmly believe that, you know, like there's some people who are like, oh yeah, you know, I'm gonna go and do this and do that, and it's gonna be better. And it's like it might or might not, it's gonna be different, you know. So I talk about like the flexibility and the time that we have, but there are many days that I'm up late and then I'm up early the next day trying to get things together, whether it's a lesson plan, whether it's grading, whether it's, you know, all these other sort of expectations that are put on us. Trying to fit all that into a 24-hour day feels impossible sometimes. And then there are other times where it's like, all right, it's, you know, December 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, then I'm gonna be off for a month and I'll see you then. So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, there's, pros and cons.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I agree with you. There's definitely pros and cons. It's I'll say being a professor is not what I thought it would be when
Really?
I was in undergrad.
Okay.
Because when I was at Oakwood, I just saw all my professors and the ones that knew how to dress, they
Hmm.
would dress so they was in suits all the time.
Really?
I'm thinking they making like crazy money. I would go to
Uh-huh.
their houses and
Hmm.
their houses was really nice. And I'm
Hmm.
yo, professors making it's Oakwood. This ain't even like, you know what I'm
Eh,
saying? I'm like,
they
yo,
they were tenured, weren't they?
I think they were 10 years.
That's a
I think
different
they were
sort of
10.
like comfortability and stability
That's true.
than than
That's true.
the early years.
The early years. That's true. Yeah, that's very true. And I'm slowly but surely coming into that for sure.
Yeah.
Like I'm not
Yeah.
going, I remember and this was at my the university where I went to doctor school,
Hmm.
and I would hear, and I don't know, I just think a lot of times white people just they not satisfied with nothing, which can be a good thing in a way. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
It could speak to their privilege, but they were
Hmm.
just I think some who had graduated or something like that were like, getting a PhD is not as all it's cracked up to be. And, life after a PhD is so much worse than being a PhD and student and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, really? And I'm thinking to myself, well, being a PhD student is
Hmm.
so much better than my life was, growing up. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I was like, well, I'm interested to find out for myself. And
Hmm.
I can't speak for nobody else, but a lot of the work that I'm doing now,
Hmm.
as a student, I was doing for free. And
Yeah.
I got
And there it is.
I got money and I ain't crazy,
Hmm.
but every two
Hmm.
weeks I'm like,
Looks great. Looks great. Bank account better.
I mean, I'm able to do so many different things. Even things I'm able to do outside of work. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
opportunities and options. And so after I got done with school and I graduated, I was like, I can't speak for you, but at least this part of my life is better.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what you ain't doing with yours, but I
I
got
can't.
other things in my life that's kind of sucking right now. But this part is cool.
Yeah, honestly, I can't speak for white people at all, especially not white men. And you could probably attest to this that like
Mm,
most of the majority of people who are going to be in doc programs and in the professoriate are white men.
mm.
And so I can't speak to what their complaints might be. I have a laundry list of my own complaints
Right,
from doctor
right.
school, and many of them relate to the same white men who have complaints about their life. So
Mm.
I can't speak to that at all. And I don't even think I have to get into the details of that because I feel like
I
across
think we understand.
professions, I feel like
I
across
think we know.
professions, people might be like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Facts. Yeah. Mhm.
But yeah, I just, I think about, being on the other side of a tenure, like you were mentioning with like the nice house and the nice outfits and stuff. And that makes me think, what do you wear to class? I'm kind of curious. What's your professor outfit of the
I'm
day
so
type choices?
glad you asked this question.
Hmm.
So shout out to my friend Tamika. And if this episode gets into the wrong hands, this could have some um
Oh, Lord.
uh effects just for me, not for nobody
Uh-huh.
else. But
Hmm.
I'll take my chances. So uh so I have a friend, her name is Tamika. She works as a diversity and inclusion CEO of diversity and inclusion at a law firm.
Hmm.
And so she asked me to come and talk about critical race theory
Hmm.
to her, to her job. So she asked me and she asked another professor, a law professor, to come and, us to be on a panel. So
Hmm.
I'm like, all right, cool. So we talked and, we did like a mock run. And And she was like, "Oh my gosh, y'all are so smart." You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all know so much about this. And both of them are Ivy League. I was the only one that didn't come from Ivy League. But we were all they were like, "Oh, this is gonna be a great conversation." And I felt good because I was like, "Ooh, I'm talking to Ivy League people." And contributing to the conversation. You know what I mean? Like really like, bolstering the conversation. So, kind of did something to my ego a little bit. But so when we got ready to do the panel, I'm putting on my clothes, I'm ready. They put on their clothes, they ready. And then when we got there, I saw what they was wearing. And I saw what I was wearing. And it's 100 and something people watching us.
Oh.
And I was like,
Professor Grant, what would you say on this topic of structural institutional racism?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it's so many different examples, particularly if you look at, for example, residential segregation, right? And you look at the fact that a majority of people live in very racially homogenous communities. Someone who does not understand structural racism may say, well, Eduardo Bonilla Silva talks about this in his book, Racism Without Racists, a sociologist out of Duke, talks about how after he collected his data, found that a large number of white people argue that the reason why this occurs is because maybe African Americans prefer to live around African Americans, and white people prefer to live around white people, and Asian people prefer to live around Asian people. And so there's this idea that people prefer to live around their own without taking into account the fact that there are structures in place that tend to keep certain groups from living amongst each other. For example, if you look at dating all the way back to the 1930s and 40s and the large amounts of redlining that existed in major cities all across the country, where African Americans were not allowed to get loans in order to move into certain neighborhoods, not because they couldn't afford it, but because they just were not allowed to. So even as the Black middle class began to grow, some people may argue that, well, they just couldn't afford to live in those neighborhoods. Well, you had a large Black middle class shortly before the Civil Rights Movement and after the Civil Rights Movement, but because of structures like redlining, because of structures like real estate steering, they were not allowed to move into these areas. They were not shown these homes. And if they were to apply for a loan to live in these areas, they would be denied that loan, right?
What were you wearing?
I need to change right now.
What were you wearing? You had your Fubu, your Sean John? What exactly?
Was you wearing Echo, nigga? What was it? Was it an Echo? Baby. So I'm gonna say it, and it may not be a big deal, but compared to what they were wearing, it was a clear difference. So I had on like a turtleneck, I had on a turtleneck and maybe like some khakis. It was nice. It was a white turtleneck with some black and white khakis, and
okay.
it was fresh. But they had on a blazer. She had on pearls, a blazer. You know what I'm saying? Real blue. Kind of subtle colors. He had on a blazer, a tie, button up, right? And at that moment, it clicked for me. Jon, you're a sociologist.
Yeah.
They're lawyers.
Right.
Two totally different,
Exactly.
two totally different fields and two totally different approaches to academia.
Right.
Sociologists come to work in shorts and flip-flops and they're sociologists. Right. You know what I mean? Look at a mess. Right. I'm the most dressed, probably best dressed out of a lot of my sociology colleagues. They're looking at me like, man, you are dressed up. And I'm in a turtleneck. And so that's how I come to work. That's how I would wear this to class, right? A polo. You know what I'm saying? Polo and some nice khakis and some Jordans. I always got matching J's. So my students know me with different colored J's on. That's how I would give a whole presentation like that.
Yeah.
But that's the sociology world.
Right.
The law world, we ain't even listening to you if you don't have on no suit. If you don't have on no tie, if you don't have on no blazer, clearly this person doesn't know what they're talking about. They ain't even dressed right. So I remember when I first came on and they saw me, I was so nervous. I was like, I messed up. I forgot this is the law world. I'm talking
Yeah.
to, and these are lawyers from like across the country. And I'm like,
Right.
oh my gosh, I messed up. I messed up. I messed up. But I had to quickly get over it because they're like, and now we want to present Dr.
Mhm.
Jonathan Grant coming to us is sociology and Africana studies. He's published
Mhm.
under it. And you just gotta let that shit
Yeah.
go and keep it
Right.
pushing. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Exactly.
So I had to get over it and talk about critical race theory and blah 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 and get through it. And I did. And I, contributed and I talked and I could send you the YouTube link so you can see the
Yes, please.
panel. Talked and it was cool. And then afterwards, like hit up Tamika and I was like, Tamika, I'm so sorry, yo. I didn't need it. Like, I messed up your thing, like whatever. And she was like, what are you talking about? I said, you ain't see how I was dressed. I had on like a turtleneck. She said, yeah, I did notice that in the beginning. But she said, but after like a minute, I wasn't paying attention.
Right.
Nobody said anything to me about it.
Right.
And once you started talking, it was clear you knew what you was talking about.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
nobody cared what you were wearing after you started talking. So
Exactly.
you don't have to worry about that, And then she said, and it's interesting you pointed that out because she said, I brought on another sociologist one time. It was over Zoom to talk about another topic. And she said she looked like she just woke up. Hair was a mess, clothes a mess. The background was like a mess, like stuff hanging down. It was horrible. But when I tell you that was the most impactful Zoom conversation that we had, like she dropped so many diamonds. She was so smart. She was so informative. And it was one of our better presentations, even though she looked a hot mess.
Yeah.
So she was like, yeah, I know how y'all sociologists are. Y'all don't be dressing up. Y'all don't be dressing up. So she was like, no, it was perfectly fine. But that made me be very conscious of like dress and different things.
Yeah, that's interesting because, I think I made like the very conscious decision to be casual. So I'll wear, like sweatshirts to work. I wear jeans every day. Very casual shoes. I think I have one pair of like ankle boots that have like a wedge on them. But other than that, you are not going to catch me in heels. If I had some fresh Timbs, I would definitely wear those. But I think, a while ago, I just made the very conscious choice that I'm going to try to opt out of respectability politics in my dress. And that was hard to even like come to because there are other ways that I feel like I do opt in at times, not in my dress, but like in other ways. And so I was like, I'm gonna draw the line at my outfit, at my outfit. But yeah, I feel like that is something that I think about because as a Black woman on a campus with I think 3 other Black women faculty, it's clearly noticeable what I do and what I don't do. Like that hypervisibility is real. And I, think about that as someone who is coming in fresh, no tenure, no form of like institutional protection and no form of like identity protection either. Not a man, not white. So the things that people usually find protection in within the academy, I don't have those things. So I definitely think about how people perceive me based on the way that I will likely show up in either a sweatshirt or some sort of like super casual sweater, maybe a t-shirt, depending on the day. So yeah.
So listening to what you're saying, and I'll let you know why I'm asking this question in a second. Listening to what you're saying, but then also viewing the sweatshirt you have on now, right? Representing what some people would argue the best HBCU in the nation.
It's not an
Um,
argument.
What was it? Was it
It's
you
not
said?
it's not an argument.
I just felt
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I know they said it a
It's
couple
clear.
years back. I didn't know if it was still,
I mean, it has been. It will be.
it's still a thing,
Still
but
is.
according to one source.
I believe the prophet said what's higher than number one is what was said.
I believe another prophet said yesterday's price ain't today's price.
Listen, them tuition dollars are saying that same line.
But I'm interested to know that if you were so you're telling me what where at your current institution. I'm interested to know if you were teaching that.
Ooh,
if you could just show people what we're talking about, if you could just show them, you know what I mean?
Okay.
If you was teaching there, how would you be dressing?
That's a good question. That is a good question. Because I mean, I think at the bottom of it is like, I don't feel any pressure to feel like I need to dress up and show up for white folks in this respectable way.
Yeah.
However, I believe Spelman College has a special way of stunting on people that is germane to the campus. So I might have to do it on them a couple times a week.
You might have to bring out
I might have to do it
maybe
on
not the Balenciaga because they under some situations right now, but maybe the Louis V. You might have to bring out the Louis V.
Maybe. I've never been a brand person, so I've never been oh, let me go and get this, particular brand. But I would definitely, if I'm wear jeans, I might at least throw on a nice cute heel to go with it, a nice crisp button down as opposed to a sweatshirt,
No, but the reason why I asked that is because when I was teaching at Morehouse, I wore my my $300 shoes. You know what I'm saying? When I would walk in there, they was like, bro, your shoes is cold, baby. I would never step on my campus with that. For what? No. Y'all ain't gonna even know the brand. Nah. But when I was at Morehouse, oh yeah. It was
but those discipline
correct.
those discipline divisions are true though, because I remember my sociology professors would be pretty casual and maybe some khaki, some slacks, and a sweater, like a pullover sweater,
right?
Whereas in these other departments you getting a suit. Maybe they'll take off the jacket if it's summer or whatever, but you getting a suit for sure.
No, my sociology, you're absolutely right. Those sociology professors be chill, dressed down. Oh yeah, I definitely got into it, but see, even my casual be but I be having on some all red J's or some orange and gray J's with an orange turtleneck and I might have my chain on. You know what I'm saying? I be coming there low key looking like a reform drug dealer. I used to be I was really a dope boy out here.
Yeah.
I haven't done it in 10 years, it's past the statute of limitations. On some real Jay-Z shit.
Right.
I sold drugs back in the day. And I'm still wearing the clothes that I wore.
Yes. Professor Jigga.
That's how I be looking for real. That's real. Yeah. Man, that's funny. My last question about being a Black faculty, and I think for me it's so significant. And you kind of mentioned it when you kind of talked a little bit about the intersection about gender as a Black woman. So you kind of brought that piece out. But what does being a Black woman professor, and I don't know if we've talked about this as much in detail in other episodes, what does being a Black woman professor mean for you in the larger Black community? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it something that you wear on your sleeve? Is it something that you like talk about with your friends? Is it something that in your neighborhood, like they know, oh yeah, she's a professor over there, or you know, whatever? Or is it something that you might kind of like downplay a little bit? Is it something like, do you talk about your research to all, you know what I'm saying? Like all like what does this mean for your Black woman identity?
Yeah,
You know
that's
what
a
I'm
good
saying?
question. That's a good question. And I think, there's two ways I'm gonna answer that. Well, there might be two questions. So there's two things I'm gonna say, but I think that one of the reasons that I thought it was important to have this conversation is because we often talk about like all of these issues that are relevant to Black communities that, that we're thinking about, like, all right, here's these issues, like, how are we thinking about them? How are other people thinking about them? And we kind of explore them on the show. And I think that one of the things that feels important is that for so many of us, education feels central to our experience, whether that's because parents, family members are like, you got to finish school, you got to do well in school, you got to go to college, you got to, like it just feels like education is really central in a lot of Black homes and families and communities. And so I think that recognizing that for a pretty significant segment of the Black population, they're going to cross through a college campus at some point. And I think realizing how pivotal, just, from a youth development standpoint, how pivotal those college years are for people, that having a Black faculty member, Black male faculty member in your case, Black woman in my case, that for some college students, having that encounter is critical. And so, I think of college within our U.S. culture is like a rite of passage. Like in other cultures, there's obviously like all kinds of rites of passages, but for us, college is a rite of passage. And having a Black professor as, someone to help guide you through that rite of passage for so many people is critical. And I often think back to a student that took one of my classes last year who was a graduating senior, and she was taking my class in the spring. And she said, "You are the first Black teacher that I've had." And she actually got really emotional. And she was like, "I'm really glad to be having this experience, but really sad that it has taken my entire life to have this experience, because the stuff that you bring into class, the way you center Blackness and Black womanhood, like I feel so seen." And so there was like a relevance to education that she had not had before. And I think that every kid who goes to school, K-12 or college, deserves that. Like they deserve that. And so that was like one of my driving things for wanting to be in education and be on a college campus. Like that was one of the things that made me feel like I wanted to be on a college campus as opposed to in K-12. And so, I think about that in terms of like the broader impact on community, and just again, like when we think back over the course of our lives, like so many times, like the things that we refer to or the values that we form or the ideas that we form during college, our sense of self like forms during college. And to be able to have like those moments where you're like, all right, I can see how this thought or idea or sense of community, whatever it might be, connects to what I'm learning in a class. Like I see someone who brings these elements of myself into a class, and I realize that, race, gender, like parts of my identity, they're important in these ways that I cannot articulate. Like I think that's incredibly important. What do I do with my identity as a Black professor, or just like as a professor, period, but like carrying that as a Black woman? I think of it like the big joker. Like, I don't use it all the time, but
Yeah.
sometimes it is nice to just, bam,
Yeah.
whenever I feel it necessary or whenever I just choose to
That's
be.
a really good,
Yeah,
that's a
whenever.
really good metaphor.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
lead with it. I definitely don't. I don't think when people see me in the street, like they assume professor for a lot of reasons. They won't assume professor, in a casual conversation, I'm meeting someone for the first time, oh, they say, what do you do? Well, what, I teach, so it's not something that I necessarily lead with, but I will sometimes try to wield it, again, to be to be petty sometimes, and then also like in in a situation where I feel like I could potentially like parlay that into some sort of like social or economic like advantage or whatever. And this is just like for example, this is a petty example though, but we bought like a fixer upper house, and so we had, we're having like different like work done, and a guy came to the house to, give us like a quote for some of the stuff that we wanted to fix up around the house. And as we're like talking in conversation, he at some point like asked like what I do, and I was like, oh yeah, I teach or whatever. And he starts bringing up like his sister, and he's like, oh yeah, my sister teaches, and God bless her, because teachers are doing such good work or whatever. It's so nice that you're teaching. The kids must love having a teacher and all kinds of stuff. He's just kind of making small talk, whatever. And then he makes an assumption, and he says, is it elementary school that you teach? So when he starts making these assumptions, I'm like, no, it's not. I teach college. So then he goes in and he's like, oh, okay. He keeps like making these sorts of like assumptions, sort of like, so is it community college that you teach? No, I teach at this elite school that's here. And then he quiets down. He's like, oh, that's a really, really good school. Are you an adjunct there? So again, all of these assumptions that he's making are just activating the petty in me.
Yeah.
So it's at that point that I have to be like, no, I'm a tenure track professor at an elite school. All your little assumptions.
With an affiliation.
Yes.
Goddamn.
Yes.
Like,
all your little assumptions.
Very well published, and I went to one of the
Yes.
top schools
Correct.
in the nation. Like,
Correct.
top schools in the nation. Playing
Correct.
with me. One in my
Correct.
community, one in your community, and the one in my community was better. So
And there it is.
quit playing with me.
It is. So I was like,
Yeah, bro.
big joker, little joker,
Like,
deuce of spades, deuce of diamonds, ace of spades.
You gotta just run a Boston on the mother.
Yes.
Like, don't make me do it. I was trying not to. But you want to keep talking.
Yes.
I was trying to be cool. I was trying to be humble.
Yes.
Kendrick Lamar told us he told us to be humble.
Yes. Yes. That's what I was trying to do. But he brought it out of me. Mm-hmm.
You want to keep going.
Yeah.
That reminds me. I was watching this. Kevin Hart has a show on Peacock where he interviews celebrities. And so he was interviewing Tracy Ellis Ross. And Tracy Ellis Ross was telling the story about how she was at a party, and it was like these elite Hollywood people or whatever. And the white executive knew her from Blackish. And so he was like, man, it's so good to, to see you and meet you and blah, blah, blah. How do you like being on, on a, on Blackish? And she was like, it's cool. It's been a great experience and blah, blah, blah. It's not something that I'm new to. And he was like, not something you're new to, how many hit shows have you been on? And she was like, I was on a hit show before. And he was like, oh, really? Well, it wasn't on a major network. And she said, and she was talking about girlfriends. She said, actually, it was on the major network. It was. And he said, oh, really? Well, you weren't the lead. And she said, I was the lead, actually. He said, really? He said, oh, well, I don't know. It must have came on during the day or something. And she was like, no,
Prime
it came
time.
on prime time. And he
Mhm.
said, really? He said, oh, well, I don't know, it probably didn't have that many seasons. She said, we went for 8 seasons. We're syndicated. It still comes on.
Mhm.
And so he kept like coming up with all these reasons. She was like, no. And it
Mhm.
was this, and it was
Mhm.
that, and it was
Mhm.
that. And then finally he said, what is the name of this show? Why have I not seen this? And
Mhm.
she was like, Girlfriends. Like, you've
Mhm.
never heard of it? He said, no, I don't know this
That's a you problem, sir.
show. Right. So she was like, it really is crazy, like how out of touch a
Mhm.
lot of these, executives and people are, because they're not in tune with our community. But
Mhm.
every reason that he gave for why she should be excited and happy about this Blackish being the first time, she's like, I've been here before. I've done this already.
I'm not new to this.
I'm not
I'm
new to this.
true
I'm
to
true to
this.
this. This is actually my second go around for
Yes.
a hit TV show,
Mhm.
So that, when you were telling that story, that reminded me of
Mhm.
that. And I'm like, look at Dr. Hader getting her
Yes.
Joan Clayton on.
Yeah. But I mean, whenever those opportunities are few and far between, and most of the time, like, I just let people rock because I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm tired and I got other things to do.
I ain't got
So
nothing to prove. Ain't got nothing to prove.
mhm.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
Man, talking about Black faculty, this how it
Mhm.
is over here with us. I think overall though, it's a great experience.
Mhm.
I enjoy it. I enjoy my job.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know how long necessarily I'll be here. I don't know where, life will take me, where God will take me.
Mm.
But like Drake said, I'm here for a good time, not a long
Not a
time.
long time. Listen, listen.
Aubrey Graham, the
Mhm.
poetry of
Mhm.
Aubrey Graham.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is there, if you do end up leaving at any point, what is like the top thing that you would miss?
Uh Probably the flexibility
Mhm.
and the interaction with youth.
I was gonna say,
I love
if you don't say the youth,
I
that's
love being connected to young people
yes.
because they keep me relevant. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? They keep me
Mhm.
knowing, they keep me in the know. They're
Mhm.
always introducing me to new things and what's
Mhm.
happening. And that's the best part about being in education, whether it's K through
Mhm.
12 or, college. One of my mentors, Miss Jackson, she's like up in age, but if you look at her, you can never tell.
Mm.
And she said the reason why she doesn't look how old she is because she works with young people. And it just
Yeah.
keeps her skin good. It
Mhm.
keeps her hair
Mhm.
good. She's always
Yeah.
around young spirit. So
Mhm.
because of that, she doesn't really age for real. You know what I'm
Wow.
saying? Her body does, but like the way she looks doesn't.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and I think that's
Yeah.
definitely that's something I would for sure miss.
Yeah. And I mean, I think young people are hilarious generally. There was we were talking about in my history class, we were talking about the indigenous folks and how white people were like using these sorts of like very stereotypical and erroneous justifications for genocide, for like the schools, like the boarding schools that they had created to like ship all of these indigenous people into and such. And we in class read this excerpt from the New York Times from, I guess this was like the 1800s, where there was like a how do you like a dinner, like a fundraising dinner, like some elite New Yorkers had put together this fundraising dinner to raise money for this like boarding school that they were going to send all these indigenous kids to. And so the article talks about like, oh, there was this dinner that was held and it was so great and it, raises money and, it's so good because these kids are so, unbathed and dirty and all of these sorts of like tropes, right? And so we read this thing in class because we're, analyzing and like talking about like all kinds of things. And one student says, I don't really understand how the white people were referring to anyone else as dirty because at this point in time, they didn't bathe themselves. So I'm just trying to really struggle and understand what was their metrics for who was clean and who wasn't.
Actuals.
I had to take a minute and collect myself because just like the way she phrased it was so hilarious. I really had to be like, give me 30 seconds, I'll be right back.
Give me 30.
But they really are very hilarious.
Yeah. No, they really are. I love, and this is young people from various, racial groups. Honestly, they're funny.
Mm-hmm.
they keep me laughing. They keep me up on the latest technology. I love giving them the opportunity to present or teach the class, because then they'll bring out a program or bring out a website, and I'm like, oh, you can do that? I ain't even know that. Like, what is this? And I'm like, oh, of course, Dr. Gray, you can do it. I'm like, they know. So
right, exactly.
they just be new. They just be up on stuff. So that's something.
I think if I were to say anything, kind of in closing, it would just be, the kids seem all right. They're all right. And we're gonna be
shout out to Chloe and Halle Bizzle.
Listen. And we gonna be there to support them.
Yeah.
Until we ain't.
Yeah. For sure. I think I guess last just quick question. Yes or no? Do you think our future looks bright based on what you're seeing with the next generation?
That's a to be determined.
That's a to be determined.
That's a to be determined.
Okay.
I really think COVID has impacted young people in some ways that we haven't even begun to understand quite yet.
Got you. And I know we talked about that on the phone yesterday. I think I'm optimistic.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic about the future generation. In terms of their creativity.
Yeah.
In terms of for many of them, in terms of their search for truth. And not wanting to just accept what's been given to them. Even the white students.
I love that about them. Yeah.
Even the white students. I'm really excited about that. But that work ethic, that's to be determined. That's to be determined. Listen.
All right.
Another episode, y'all. Street Academy Podcast, where we keep one foot in the academy and one foot in the streets eats. All hearts and minds clear. Everybody good?
We good.
We good. I'm hungry. I'm about to go fix me something to eat. Yeah.
Me too.
About to fix me something to eat. And then I got to pick up this girl from school. So that is that. But thank y'all for rocking with us. Appreciate y'all. Hopefully the next episode we have will be one with Amber, and probably maybe the last one for the year. We wrap up and then get ready to jump back in for 2023.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna say bye to the year on this episode because I'm gonna believe that we're gonna do one more before the end. Yeah, I think we're gonna do one more with all three of us. So that's what we're gonna shoot for. All right, y'all. Peace.
That got their feet upon the neck of the haters, the game and the devil like